Hey there, hunters, I guess, and welcome back to my series of Let's Talk About videos where I just showcase, review, and talk about non-Monster Hunter games that I play, because I do play other stuff. The goal of these videos is to hopefully shed some light on the games that I'm playing, whether that leads people to picking them up or confirms that they don't actually want to play that game. Today's game of topic is Thymesia by Overboard Studios, based out of Taiwan. This is their premiere game, and I gotta say, it's a pretty strong showing for their first game. So Thymesia is a Souls-like game based on the Black Plague and has a lot of Bloodborne vibes. You know, people were messing with the vile blood, mixing it with pure blood, and then rather finding a cure for the plague, they made monsters, that kind of thing. I personally love gothic themes, but as much as I would have loved for this to be another Bloodborne, it actually plays very much like Sekiro, with a strong focus on parry chains and interrupts, though the inspiration can be a little heavy-handed at times. So if you're familiar with and a fan of Sekiro, you're going to feel right at home here. If you're wondering what specifically made me say it plays like Sekiro, well, the enemy encounters have the exact same vibe. You parry their attacks in chains, and then counter when they're done, and finish them off and execute them, every single time. While the enemies do have a life meter, and I guess they did in Sekiro too, but nobody paid attention to that, it functions similar to the posture meter in Sekiro. As you damage enemies, they're going to lose life, but they're going to have this green wound meter here in Thymesia. This is recoverable HP that will recover very quickly if you let off your pressure. So yes, it functions just like posture, but the difference here is that you can permanently remove chunks of the recoverable HP by using your plague attacks, which are either your claws or your weapons borrowed from enemies. So you need to take off their HP twice essentially, and when it's all gone, you can perform a finish around the enemy, and that's pretty much how every fight works. Bosses even have the multiple bars that you need to finish in phases, same as Sekiro. The talent and skill system in Thymesia is also following a similar style to Sekiro, rather than other Souls-like games. You have a predetermined tree here, and you can get up to 25 talent points, for every time you put a stat in, you get up to 25, and you can build Corvus as you see fit. Respecs are free for the talent system, so go crazy. The only stats you have are Strength, Vitality, and Plague, which pretty much are self-explanatory. Strength increases your damage and your wounds, Vitality increases your life, and Plague increases your claw and energy, which is like your mana. Plague weapons, which are either taken from enemies temporarily with your claw attack, or you can permanently get them as skill drops. They tend to have more additional bonuses based upon your stats, so you do kind of want to balance those out a bit. Combat in Thymesia is definitely the best selling point of the game. It's incredibly smooth, and not once had I gotten bored with it. Corvus has many tricks and tools you can use to overcome your enemies. You have dodges, slides, jumps, parries, some feather counters, a vast array of plague weapons, and they all let you dictate how you want to play the game. While on the surface the combat looks a little shallow, there's actually great depth here if you want to explore it and change your build to approach combat in different ways. Starting out was rather difficult, learning all the timings and how enemy AI worked and stuff was a little bit of a chore, but after the first level it clicked and it was just all steam ahead from there. Also, putting points into parry window definitely helped a lot. Bosses were definitely a highlight of the game, even though there were only about 6 of them. The fights were fun and all had some unique mechanics learned, aside from one near the end. While I didn't find any of the bosses particularly challenging after the first one, mostly due to not having parry window talented in, I still enjoyed each encounter. The bosses weren't just stronger enemies and that most games do, kind of like how the elites are just elites and then bosses. They all have their own unique movesets, models, and arenas. Which I guess shouldn't be saying much, but a lot of games these days tend to do the whole just upgrading enemies into, bosses later, or turning bosses into enemies later down the road. And now while I could gush about the combat of Thymesia, it is essentially just Sekiro, just very accurately remade, which is a feat itself, as getting that right feel for combat is hard. You can't just copy it and expect it to have the same feedback. Just look at Dauntless trying to be Monster Hunter. Does not feel the same. And that's also not to say that Thymesia is all positives and a game of the year. It's far from that, sadly. Enemy variety is very lacking, and you pretty much fight the same enemies with different weapons across a few levels that exist. There are some unique encounters with mini-bosses, and they're always fun and provide a good challenge, but outside of the first level, there really aren't many surprises left. A lot of the same infantry-style units with varying degrees of health and damage for the most part. The only upside I could see was that by the later half of the game, I was actually very comfortable with all the enemy movesets, so I could easily parry like a champ and plow through the levels. Sadly, that's the other main downside of Thymesia. It's short, it's only composed of 4 levels with a few side missions to go back into the previous level, albeit from a different spot with different enemies. There's no New Game Plus, and the only benefit to getting 100% of the items and such is to see a very short cutscene at the end and just do little different ones depending on what you pick at the end. There's no special boss encounters, no secrets, or anything really to discover unless you're a lore junkie. Speaking of lore though, pretty much all the information and pickup pieces can be found in like one playthrough. I think I only missed like 3 lore pages, and there's really not any dialogue, so it doesn't take you long to collect and read everything. I ended up finishing all the missions and all the bosses and collecting almost everything and reading it all in about 9 hours, which is very short for a Souls game. That's not to say it's not worthwhile. I was thoroughly enjoying my experience the entire time, it just left me craving for more. And as I had mentioned earlier, with this being Overboard's first published game, I think it's actually a very strong showing. If more people get their hands on Thymesia and experience it, I think it would help pave the way for future titles to be a bit more grand in scale. Games like this that make me wanting more really do sit longer with me, despite how short it actually was. The craving's going to stick with me, and in the future it's going to make me want to check out the game for the DLCs whenever I'm browsing Steam, or check out future releases from the studio. It might have been short, but it was sweet, and that lingers. So that's Thymesia. It's a gothic style Sekiro that really laid out a great foundation for what the studio is capable of. It is well executed, but it is straight to the point and quite short. The $25 price tag isn't horrible by any means, so if you can spot it, I would definitely give this game a try, though I totally understand if this game being this short is not worth the price tag for a lot of people. Maybe in the future if DLC comes out it would be a great pickup then, or if it goes on sale then I'd 100% recommend it. But that's all for me though, thank you all for watching and good luck out there.